Finally! Another devlog! Oh, it's been such a long time. I want to update everyone on the progress of the game. So, today we're mostly going to talk about the interface. I thought I'd go through how I created the interface. This is probably going to be interesting for you. Maybe not if you're creating a minimalistic interface, because then this way of doing it will probably be completely wrong for you. But if you're making something like more of an old school kind of interface, which wasn't what I'm going for with this game, I'm trying to create something which looks more like, I don't know, Diablo 2 or maybe Pillars of Eternity. I really like their interface where there's a lot of things going on, some ornate things, stuff like that. Spikes sticking out. I think you can even see here in the background what's going on. So, I thought I'd show off the interface because the interface is a little bit unique in this game. But even though you're probably not going to create an interface like this in your game if you're doing that, I think it will still be interesting to see the entire process of how I created this from scratch. I haven't used any assets from the asset store or anything. Oh, I actually have. Lying. These balls here. The health orbs is the correct word, not balls. The health orb and the mana orb is actually from the asset store. That's actually the only thing from the asset store, except for the animation. The animation of the character is also from the asset store. But everything except for that is made from scratch. So, let's jump into the game, and I'm gonna explain the interface because it's quite different from how we're used to have interfaces working. If you saw the first video where I talked about how I wanted to create the interface, then you will know exactly what I'm talking about. What is the interface is all about. So, also, I capped the frame rate at 60 FPS. You can do that. You can just do on awake on any of your scripts. You can just set the target frame rate equals to whatever. I put it at 60 now. And that helps out a lot if you want to record your game. Like now I'm going to be recording while I'm playing in the editor. So before that it just ran at like 500 frames per second, even though most frames were completely wasted. And that made it so that the recording looked like because OBS didn't get enough CPU. Anyways, let's jump into the game. So, this is what I got going so far. Don't mind the loot explosion here in the beginning. That's just because we need to have a lot of items to be able to put things in our inventory. So, as per usual, we can move around the camera. I think I showed this off last time, and we can move the character around. We're completely butt naked right now. We're probably not gonna start off butt naked. I'm probably gonna make this guy some nice underpants or something. But here's what happens. If you hover over an item, it will show you what part this gives, and you will see the silhouette of not the item, that is of this spot. So if I click on this now, if I click on the chain pants, it will automatically open the inventory. You can probably turn this off in options menu later on, but I think this is pretty cool. And then it will highlight for here are all the slots that you start off with. You can see here's, I think it's pretty. Let me know in the comments if this is not obvious how you should put things in. Like it highlights in green where you should put the item, and every other slot is red, and of course you can't put them in those slots unless there's a bug or something. Hopefully not. So if I put this here, you will see that this gives another slot. So now I get one more slot which I can put things in. If I have these chain pants on, I can then put on plate on top of the chain pants. And of course you can imagine this being many layers of stuff that I can put on later on, but initially it's gonna be you know, a few layers. But look at this, for instance. Here we can see that this thing has 3 things. So let's put this in. This, you can see on the item itself when I hover over it that it gives a plate, a inner plate shoulder pad, and a overplate shoulder pad. And hopefully you're gonna see by the silhouette later on, you're gonna know what items are and what positions they go into. So let's see if we can find some more items. Let's within these plate boots don't have any, not give any additional things, and then we can see what happens. Of course, this appears. Everything appears on the character. Everything that you can see on the ground, and everything that you put on your character actually appears on your character, which I very much like. So we have a plate mail on there. We have a plate helm, and now, for instance, now we have 3 things equipped there. We have the plate mail, we have the plate shoulder, the inner shoulders, and the outer shoulder pads. And you can see this on the character. Here are the inner pads, and here are the outer. And if you now want to unequip the chainmail, it will mark. I don't have any sounds yet. It's probably gonna make some kind of sound to make it known. Everything also, the items don't have stats yet. All of them just say unidentified, and that's because when we get to the combat system, then I think stats are gonna be interesting. But now it doesn't matter if I have any stats because I don't have any enemies in the game yet. So that's why it works like that. So it highlights them in red like this when you try to unequip. So you need to take all of these off before you can take this off. It's going to be a little bit annoying maybe when you re-equip things with this system, but it's going to be even more complicated if things can be inside of other things, and it's like, it's such a mess to code. So I think this easiest. Also, as you can see, when something is a slot, it just has this silhouette of something. When we actually put in an item, and when that item actually is counted towards your stats, for instance, this chest might have, I don't know, +5 armor or something. If it counts towards your armor, it will have this blue frame around it. That's important because now we get to the next part, which is the belt. So the belt, when you put that on, gives you a lot of slots for bags. And this is how we store stuff, because we don't have a normal inventory. So if you pick up a magic bag here and put in a magic bag, then that will give us these slots. And these slots are special because any item can be put into these slots. And that's kind of the storage space. The more bags you have, the more slots you have. But the idea behind this system is that you want to have a mix between bags so that you can store stuff, but you also want to have quick items, because there's going to be things such as scrolls and think about like daggers and stuff that you can attach to your belt. And if you use them from your belt, this is going to be turn-based, right? You will not end your turn immediately when you use that item, but if you use it from inside of a bag, that will count as you taking your entire turn to do that. So it's going to be much quicker if you have a throwing dagger or something to throw it from your belt. So I'm thinking about systems of how to make that work, but that's the idea at least. And then we can take, if I for instance take these chain gloves, I can put them in this slot, and I will give a couple of slots here, but I can also put them inside the bag. Let's say I don't need these chain gloves, then it will appear like this, and hopefully you're gonna understand, because the background is a little bit muted in color, and it doesn't have this blue thing here. This means that the item is not active on your character. Even if these chain gloves have +3 armor, your character is not gonna get 3 armor, because it's not technically on your character. I mean, it's inside of a bag, so it doesn't give you any bonuses. But anything that has this blue thing going on here will count. Just gonna put on some items. I think that's everything for the inventory. We're gonna put on all these bags. I'm gonna see that these bags actually also appear, all of them, which I think is a little bit cool. I'm gonna pick up this, pick up the plate there. Is there anything else? There's a bag there. And we can see that all these bags actually appear on the character, which I think is a little bit cool. And they have some physics, so they bounce around on your legs and stuff like that as you move around. Totally necessary, right, to spend a couple of hours on that. I don't know if last time we could open doors. We can open doors now at least. There's only 3 rooms and there's no enemies yet, but we can walk around inside here. And we can throw this shield out on the ground, and we can walk away, and we can throw a bag here maybe, and yeah, walk here. Did it not appear? Did the item not appear? Where did the item appear? Okay, the shield appeared there, boots appeared there. Okay, there's something wrong with me dropping items. Okay, there's some bugs still to be worked out, but yeah, that's the inventory system, how it works. Thought it was pretty cool. Also, you can close this here, and you can press E to get it back. Schmink, schmink, schmink. I don't know. I think it's pretty sweet. So now I want to go through how I created this. So let's jump into, first we're gonna jump into Blender. What did I use? I used Blender, Substance Painter, and I actually used Unity again, and then GIMP. So let's jump into Blender and I'll explain how I created this. So here we are in Blender then. We can see, here you can actually see the entire interface going on the screen here. So here we have the skill bar down in the bottom, and then here we have the inventory. This is what is the thing with the cross on here, how you close it. Here there's going to be like labels, like maybe it's gonna say inventory or something like that. And here we have all the items. And these are the pop-ups that pop up whenever you hover over an item. And I just started with simple shapes like this. Like you can see, this is just a cylinder and a cube, essentially. I stretched a little bit, and then I made a little bit of a hole inside of it. And then I got the idea to add spikes, and I started bending. I just added more polygons. If you go to, here's what I did. Go to editor, and we go to, let's see, tools, is it? I just subdivided this multiple times. And then I just started drawing out some shapes out of this. And it also has a mirror modifier on it. So it's mirror on this axis. And then I thought it would look decently cool. Looked fine, looked good enough. Started creating these shapes. Started with this. Pretty much same procedure there. Just made some bends and stuff. Best teacher ever, I know. I'm not gonna cover this too much, because I think if you know Blender, if you don't know Blender, you'll probably have no idea what I'm talking about anyways. And if you know Blender, you will know how to create these kinds of things. It's very simple to create them. There's nothing special really going on there. Just using the mirror modifier and drawing out shape using this modifier here. You don't know, the magnet, whatever it's called. The magnet plus mirror modifier, that's all you need to know. And then you can create this interface right here. And then of course I created a high poly version to use as a texture on this, because we're gonna bring them back into Unity. The idea is to create this interface first in Blender, then we're gonna paint it in Substance Painter, which I'm gonna show you next, and then we're gonna bring it from Substance Painter back into Unity and render it with an orthographic camera and with a transparent background in Unity, and then use that image that we get from that to actually create the interface. That's how we're gonna do it. So I created this, and then I just created a high poly version of this, so we can see the inventory. We have inventory low, inventory high. I think that's a good way of naming, because then it automatically works in Substance Painter. So in the high version here, I just went in and sculpted. We can go into let's hide the low version, and then let's go to let's see here, sculpt mode. There it is. I'm good at Blender, don't you worry. And then I just created, if you haven't downloaded already, there's an orb pack, which I think is just amazing. It's available for free. I don't remember at what web. If you search for like orb pack Blender, you will find it's probably the first hit on Google. Just download that and use it for all your sculpting needs, because it's amazing. So yeah, created this essentially from that pack. Just basic, very basic sculpting stuff. You can see this. It's not any great artist who has created this. Very simple stuff creating this thing. Did the same thing with this, of course. This here. I think I used, yeah, just various brushes. Just went around and removed some of the surfaces here with the whatever that brush is called. I think you get one of them for free. Is it not the smooth brush? Whatever. I think the flatten brush might work. Whatever. Just simple sculpts. Creating this. And now we're gonna jump into the Substance Painter, because now it's gonna make sense. We have a high poly version, we have a low poly version, and of course we're gonna use the high poly version to texturize the low poly version and then bring it back into Unity. So let's jump. So here we are in Substance Painter. I always need to say, so here we are in. I don't know why. I think I watched too much Brackies or something. Brackies. This here is the interface. So I brought in the sculpts. I brought in the high poly version and the low poly version. If you don't know how to use this, no, I can't show you, because I can't show you dialog boxes, because for some reason they don't show up in OBS. But essentially what you do is you use bake mesh maps, and then you bake the mesh maps with the high poly version that you create from your sculpt on your low poly version. Then I created, as you can see here, 4 different textures. Doesn't matter, you can create any amount of textures, because it doesn't need to render in real time, because this is just so they can bring it back then in Unity. We can look at the everything that I created here, like all the layers and everything, are very simple. It's essentially just creating my own smart materials. I use a base color, and then I add some color variations from some different maps that came with Substance Painter, and then I used all the it's called smart filtering, whatever. You can use this for like highlighting edges and stuff like that, so that they become more pronounced. That's essentially what I did. But I can see we're still quite far off the final version. We have the colors are somewhat correct, but you can do a lot of work also later on in GIMP and stuff like that. So it doesn't need to be perfect here. You don't need to worry about contrast or stuff like that. Just kind of where things need to be is all you need to worry about in Substance Painter if you're creating an interface in this way. So now when I've created it this way, all I did after this is just I exported the textures in a format that works in Unity, and then we're gonna jump back into Unity and we're gonna jump into another project which I use just to render stuff. Because I have a special camera set up there. So let's jump. So here we are back in Unity. Now it's starting to look like it does in the game. It looks very, very similar. All I've done essentially after this, I don't think I'm gonna show you the last stage because it's a little bit uninteresting. It's very much up to you how you want to do things. Essentially after this, I'm gonna show you how I set this up. But the step I did after this is just bring it in the GIMP, you can bring it into Photoshop or whatever, and I just played around with different filters and different saturation levels of the colors and everything until I found something that I liked. What I did on if you want to copy exactly my style, what I did, I used the Oilify filter, Cartoonify, what else did I use? I used Grain also. Those were the three things, and then I hand painted all the edges of everything. That's essentially what I did. But for this stage, what you need to do when you bring this back into Unity, of course I've imported everything. I create all the materials from everything from Substance Painter. You probably know that workflow if you worked with Substance Painter before. We have the interface here. So what I've done here is I've set up a couple of lights, but most importantly, I think the camera setup is the most important. If you want to do this, you need to have your camera on orthographic. That means that even if I move this away, you can see here I move it away, but it doesn't get any further away. Unfortunately, it just messes up the lights. But that's how an orthographic camera works. Doesn't matter how far it is away, it always looks at the same distance. So that's very good if you want to create an interface so that's a flat, not, you know what I'm saying. Not crazy. I'm not crazy. That's just how it is. So orthographic, then you also need to set your background color. You can set the black, that doesn't matter too much, but you need to set the alpha value. Can you see the alpha? No, we can't see the alpha value. Ah, god darn. The pop-ups unfortunately won't be recorded by OBS, but if you click here on the thing here, and if you draw the slider of the alpha value down to 0, then you have a transparent background, and then you can use a package. If you go to, oh, you can't see what I'm clicking on there. Okay, if you go to the package manager, you probably know where that is. You can download the Unity recorder, and that can then record this image as a 8K picture. This entire thing here, and will record with transparent background. We just record one image, which is perfect. So that's what we're gonna do. But before I did that, I of course set up a couple of lights. I put in 3 lights here at the top. You can put them in wherever you feel like. I think the best lights or the most useful lights are I put in 2 lights. One is light a little bit from the back. You have to play around with these lights, but I think some stronger lights with a more of a natural sunlight color like this, and then I put a blue light from under which glows in this angle. And I think that made it look a little bit cool. You can see that there are a little bit of blue reflections down here, and I think that gives it a little bit more character or something. So yeah, that's how I set everything up. I also put reflection probes on everything in certain places just to make it look more realistic. And that's pretty much the setup. That's pretty much all you need. As I said, then you just go into GIMP or Photoshop or whatever you want, and you basically, the idea for me at least was to try to ruin, because it looks a little bit too perfect, it looks a little bit too 3D when you bring it in initially. So you need some kind of filter like Oilify, for instance, in GIMP, which kind of makes it look more cartoony or more hand-drawn and not so much 3D rendered, because it looks a little bit too much like you're just screenshotting the game, which you are essentially doing with this technique. But yeah, that's pretty much how I created the interface Yeah. Thank you so much for watching. Next time, hopefully, I'm gonna talk about the enemies and how I created them and how they work in the game. And hopefully by that time, we'll have sorted out the bug also where I dropped the item there. I need to sort that out. And it will also be turn-based. It's not really turn-based now because there's no enemies, so the enemies can never have their turn. But then we'll see a little bit more how I thought about the dynamics between the turns and everything, how that's gonna work. So yeah, thanks so much for watching, and see you next time. Member shoutout. Member shoutout. Thank everyone so much for watching, and a special thank you of course to Alexander G. Valencia, our top tier patron, but also to all our members keeping this channel alive, of course. Here they come! Oh! Adam Alexis, Simon Lauer, Rodney Cox, Herman Monster, The Soft Pillow, Shamanix, Alex Michael, Nathaniel Lizard, Laser Setestan, Eric0234, Jeff Henry, Michael W, Topless Investments, W Lutz 1978, Peter Gold, Sean Stevens, Gabriel Juvenal, Way, Messamok 1, Ye Old Basses, Dingo Scrub, Crew, The Barbarian, Rainbow 2002, Eli Moonlight Start, Raker 2000, Jurassic Fart, Eric Parsons, Rage Not Badass, I Wanna Be, John Domyan, Gesusaki, Own77, Ellie Curtis, Noah BH, MC Hermes, Fumiaki Kinoshita, Jacob, Steve Draminski, Strange Bronte, Sky Super Zero, Tim Dutton, Jake Denley, Santa John, The McDuncan, Relgan, Chase Closed, John Lacava, III, Honsa Kos, Agon Reborn, Ramen Noodles for Me, Nethervex, Musketeer, Link is Weak, Tom Cute, Michael, Yoma Saho, Name the Epithet, Dear Lurgorf, Dimlit Knight, Stricker Mike, Postal Guru, Anthony Dibble, Mentosorium, Michael Capido, Juan To Ying, Vincent Baudet, Paul Robert Miller, Anthony Nixon, Ninja Astral, Kupta Grace, Optimus Prime, Shuckles M, Dingus, Virus Dingus, Dan McSharp, Pocky U, Kitty Bum Lover, Magic Pistolman, Seppi 1310, Martin Newman, Kaitrine Loistgelb, That's Mr. God to You, Simon Fairley, Verocta, Jake Palmer, Acros Ascending, Mr. Thule, Upside Down, Thomas Schwartz, Kyle Hoff, Judy Robinson, Robert Montgomery, Matthias Porley, Alessandro Maschi, Salim Proctor, Robert Lewis, Stephen Reed, John LaRoche, Leigh Firth, Aaron Noble, Adam Alexis, Adam Ruth, Alexander G. Valencia, Arteria, Barbara McKinley, Betsuma, Big Bob MTG, Branton Dobbs, Butt with Ass, Dan Goodsell, DBK Drummer, Dixon Sider, Dr. Jaden, Draco Smith, Drew Styles, Frank Sherwood, Freeman Stepson, Grinning Demon, Harshet Singh, Infinite Draw, James Hazel, Javier Diaz, Jellybeans, Jonathan Burgos, Liquid E, Lochinator, Mami Punani, Mario Morates, Martin Newman, Matthew Goggins, Neo Terrier, Nesmoth, Ninja Long Gnome, Patrick Henning, Patrick Parks, Piotr Stalorsk, Potte, Rainbow Cake, Rhett Khan, Rufino A. Oregon, Serge Caramaro, 7Guy777, Super Noodle 7, Thanatos, Thomas Schutte, Travis Markley, Trumman, Daniel Williams, Jack Wren, Eat It, and Aventum Tantum. You guys are amazing. If you also want to become a member and help support me, then check out the join button next to the subscribe button. Why not check out my Patreon, link in the description. Thank you so much everyone for watching, and see you tomorrow. Also thank you to all the badge holders on Patreon. You guys are amazing! Thanks so much. See you tomorrow.